Coming up on Tech News Weekly this week, I'm Dan Moren, sitting in for Micah Sargent. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about. First thing, we're joined by CNET's Abrar Al-Heeti to discuss Facebook's play for younger users. They're going after the teen market once again, and it seems like it's actually really taking off. Then Abrar sticks around, and we discuss Zoom CEO Eric Yaun's preview of digital avatar twins coming soon to Zoom. Well, maybe not soon, but someday. Instead of going to your Zoom meetings, you may be able to send a digital twin in your place. Maybe I'm a digital twin right now. We have no way of knowing. Then we talk to Ryan Christoffel from 9to5Mac to get a preview of Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference coming next week, including all the AI features you can stand to hear about and probably way more than that. Finally, we wrap everything up with a discussion of the new Windows recall feature and some security concerns that have been raised about this capability, which keeps track of everything you're doing on your Windows PC. We talked to Zac Bowden from Windows Central, who gives us the full details on it. A whole lot more to come. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly with me, Dan Moren, for Thursday, June 6, 2024. What to expect from WWDC24. Hello, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. My name is Dan Moren. I'm sitting in for Micah Sargent this week, and I have the great pleasure to be joined from CNET by Abrar Al-Heeti. Hi, Abrar. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me. So excited to talk to you here today. We love Micah.
I should say
obviously,
thank you for having me, because you're here more than I am. So I'm the interloper this week.
Well, I'm sure we're all thrilled to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Well, let's kick things off with the story of the week that you have brought with you, which I thought was pretty interesting. Facebook, not a thing that we end up talking about these many days, but they're back in the news a little bit, and they may have something interesting going on over there.
Yeah, welcome to today's throwback episode of Tech News Weekly. So this caught my attention because it is Facebook, right? And it's not only a Facebook story, but it's about how younger users are apparently using Facebook on a daily basis, and the highest number in 3 years. So more than 40 million users in the US and Canada between the ages of 18 and 29 are now checking Facebook each day, which was just so interesting to me because I didn't realize, I understood that Meta as a whole was trying to lure younger users, Gen Z users. I did not realize Facebook was part of that equation, but it kind of makes sense now that I think about what they've been doing, right? So they've been boosting their AI recommendation algorithm to, try to keep people on the platform more, but they've also been pushing video. We know Instagram has been pushing video and Reels, but Facebook has also been pushing video. So they had this new video player that launched a couple months ago, where you can find Reels and live videos and longer videos, just like you could on TikTok. And Facebook says that video accounts for over 60% of the time spent on that platform. So just really interesting to think of them tapping into that there. But it's so interesting because, I don't know, were you as surprised by this as I was? Because I just had no idea that this was an effort on their part to try to get younger people on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, they are struggling to compete with things like TikTok. And I mean, Instagram is obviously in their portfolio, but Facebook, I think, is sort of the part of the big brand, right? For a long time, it was the brand. I mean, the name of the company was Facebook. So it makes sense they want to draw younger people in, but it surprises me that it's working, I guess, is the thing.
I think that's right, yeah. Exactly.
One of the interesting things I saw in this article was that one of the things that was drawing people in was the reliance on some of these other parts of the platform, things like Marketplace and even like the dating aspect of it. I thought that was kind of interesting too, because it does not, I guess it made sense to me. Like, I don't use Facebook. My wife doesn't use Facebook. But that said, we have a 2-year-old and we have bought a ton of stuff off Facebook Marketplace for that. So I guess there is an appeal there still.
And I thought about that too, because when I saw that, I thought, oh, that makes sense. Because you start out by looking at, where can I buy a used couch or coffee table for my new place? Mm-hmm. And then you, I guess, inevitably end up scrolling through your feed and seeing what people are posting. But the emphasis on, younger people using Facebook dating and marketplace and groups, I think is so fascinating. But then I think about how there's this push and pull between doing things that cater to a younger audience, but then doing things that seem a little bit more counterintuitive. So if you look at Instagram, for example, Instagram has recently rolled out unskippable ads, which essentially imagine you're scrolling through your feed and then you get an ad and you cannot scroll until you finish. It's 10 seconds or something until you finish watching this ad. And I thought about that because it's if that were to happen on TikTok, I think that would be detrimental because what people are doing on Instagram now are just closing the app. Like, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm done. Because if that were to happen on TikTok, I would say, this is my sign that I need to get off this platform because I've spent 2 hours on it already. Okay, here's my chance. Here's my pause. I'm going to hop off. So if that happens on Instagram, where people are already kind of like starting to tune out because they want more of those. The algorithm isn't as good as TikTok's yet. It's getting better, I think, but it's still not there. So I don't know what the thinking is with that, the unskippable ads. I know it's still just a test, but I have already seen online people are livid about it. Sounds really annoying.
I mean, it sounds terrible to me. I think I would absolutely just exit out of the app if I hit something. And like, I hate watching on streaming where you can't skip the ads. I'll get up and go do something else. I mean, granted, I was, a child of the 80s. The ads were always unskippable when I was a kid. But it is interesting to watch Meta try all these different things. And despite being, they've talked a lot about their sort of pivot to VR, XR, all that stuff. But social media still seems to be such a huge part of what their company is, between Facebook, Instagram, and now Threads too. And on the Thread side, it feels like they're still trying to capture perhaps some of the Twitter exile market, or maybe just some of those demographics that aren't grabbed by either Instagram or Facebook. Do they kind of have a social media destination for every demographic, or at least I guess that's what they'd like us to think? Yeah.
And the thing about Threads, like me personally, I've had a really hard time just getting into it. Like, I feel like I scroll through and I'm like, this is really boring, versus I know Twitter/X has changed a lot, but it's still like, I laugh a lot because I'm like, oh, these are really funny tweets that, I enjoy, and they're still relevant and timely, and you still have, trending things on the side that you can click on. But yeah, no, I feel like I saw a tweet actually the other day that said, I want Instagram to understand that I do not care who just posted their first thread, because that's something else. You're scrolling through Instagram and it's like, so-and-so posted their first. I barely know who that is. So it's
synergy. They're trying to move you from one to the other. It's the thing I like about Threads and Mastodon and Blue Sky and all the ones, I've stopped using Twitter pretty much. But the thing I like about that is I get to the end, like well, there's nothing else. Nobody else is, but like, there's like 8 posts and that's it. And then I stop, and it's kind of great in some ways, but I miss that endorphin hit from the constant fire hose.
Oh God, that'd be so nice if there was an end to like TikTok for me, or even Twitter. It's so bad, but yeah, I think
you hit it.
Yeah, exactly. I think Meta's been trying to figure out how much to have that cross-platform experience, because there was that feature that I believe they kind of rolled back recently, where you'd be able to kind of message across Facebook, Instagram. And so I think they realized, okay, people don't necessarily want to do that. So I think with this Facebook news about, younger users coming on this platform, I wonder how that'll inform their future decisions about how much of their resources are they going to pour into building Instagram into the TikTok competitor, or are they also going to, because video is doing so well on Facebook now, apparently, kind of spread the love, and then how do you build up Threads to become that thing that can actually be better than Twitter for a lot of people like me who refuse to accept that reality.
Yeah. Are we poised for a Facebook renaissance where people start, like, their money starts flowing back into Facebook and they put in more features that people actually want to use? Or I don't know. I mean, Facebook still, I think, probably gets derided by a lot of the younger generation as that place where their parents, or, parents in some cases, go and do all their social networking. But I guess, like, if fashion ever shows us anything, it's like retro stuff comes back in style all the time, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because I was thinking about that in terms of things like retro tech that makes a comeback. So like flip phones or like, dumb phones, as people call them, non-smartphones. And I did wonder, I was like, is this just part of that craze where it's like, oh, this is like retro and cool and like it's a bit more scaled back. But I wonder if it'll be part of that. And I think it also kind of reminds me of Snapchat, which is such a funny platform because I feel like it depends how you think about Snapchat is directly related to how old you are, right? So I'm 30 years old and I remember when Snapchat first took off and we all had Snapchat and then we all decided it was dead and it was like not cool. Like nobody would use Snapchat anymore. We all switched to Instagram stories. But then if you're even a couple years younger than me, then Snapchat is still something you use every day. And so I just wondered if Facebook would have that kind of resurgence and popularity among future younger generations.
Man, speaking as a 44-year-old, Snapchat was the first one that came along, the first social media network that came along where I was like, I literally don't understand this. I always felt too old for it. And I never particularly was a heavy Facebook user, but I certainly was on there for a while. Twitter was for me always like, that was like my number one social network. And then I was really sad when they drove it into the sea. But, maybe that'll come around and be cool again, too. Maybe we'll see Twitter really, pick up some of the losses it's had. I think it's, there's not been any social networks that have come out of it that have really managed to dethrone it. I think it's turned into this very weird fragmented landscape. And maybe the resurgence of Facebook amongst younger people is just part of that.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I think, I guess what we've learned is sometimes you just got to hang back and see. But I mean, yeah, and I can't, I can't not say that Facebook is still a really big deal for a lot of people. So,
sure,
it does make sense that they have probably been like, okay, well, we've already got this demographic, this older demographic, in the palm of our hands. But yeah, let's continue to keep catering to younger people. And I'm curious to see what other changes kind of roll out and how they leverage things like AI and more videos all over our feeds to try to keep us coming.
Yeah, I mean, and they got it right. I mean, that's the thing is they've bet their company more or less on social networking, and the problem with Facebook especially has been your users are going to start to die off, or just you're not replacing them fast enough, right? You need growth, and there's not as much growth amongst older demographics, so you got to appeal to the younger markets, and that's hard because trying to predict what a teenager or 20-something is going to find interesting and cool, like. If there was a science for doing that, people would have figured it out by now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's each new generation. And then I think also think about like, they mention things like Facebook groups and marketplace and dating being where younger people go to, but those are not really pockets of the platform that are like monetized as much because you don't see as many ads through there. So I'm also curious how they'll find ways to, make that, because they want younger users because they want to make money off of those all users, right? So how will they find ways to kind of cater to them to not only keep them coming on the platform, but to also profit from that engagement?
Yep, that's the big challenge. How do you turn that into money? And I think Facebook, they would love to be able to turn more things into money, I believe.
Wouldn't we all though? Yeah.
Is there a button I can press for that? That would be pretty great.
Exactly.
All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about another platform that people love to hate, Zoom, and our future of digital avatars and AI on Zoom. But first, we're going to turn things over to Micah to tell us a little bit about one of this week's sponsors.
I know you're enjoying this episode of Tech News Weekly, but I do need to take a quick break. Thank you, by the way, to Dan for being here. I want to tell you about Lookout, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. So today, every company out there is a data company, and that means that, frankly, every company is at risk. There are cyber threats, there are breaches, there are leaks. These are the new norm, and cyber criminals grow more sophisticated by the minute. At a time when boundaries no longer exist, we're working from home, we're working from a coffee shop, we're working from a beach. What it means for your data to be secure has fundamentally changed. Enter Lookout. From the first phishing text to the final data grab, Lookout stops modern breaches as swiftly as they unfold. Whether on a device, in the cloud, across networks, or working remotely at the local coffee shop, Lookout gives you clear visibility into all of your data at rest and in motion. You'll monitor, assess, and protect without sacrificing productivity for security. With a single unified cloud platform, Lookout simplifies and strengthens reimagining security for the world that will be today. So visit lookout.com today to learn how to safeguard data, secure hybrid work, and reduce IT complexity. That's lookout.com. Thank you, Lookout. Let's head back to the show.
And thank you, Micah. Now it's time for my story of the week. I was fascinated to see an interview over on The Verge from Leo Patel and Eric Yaun, who is the CEO of Zoom. A lot of stuff in here, but the thing that I think grabbed everybody's attention was this idea of digital twins. Yaun says that like in the future, maybe 5-6 years from now, instead of going to all your meetings yourself, you'll be able to send your digital AI powered avatar instead. So if you ever felt like, hey, I've just got way too many meetings to go to and I don't want to go to them all, instead you could send your little AI avatar. It would be able to make decisions and like listen to all the input, as if it were you. I found this fascinating, and Leo Patel did as well. I think he really drilled down deep with Yaun here about what this would entail, what kind of technologies need to be developed in order to get us to this point, and what some of the challenges might be with this. Abrar, I don't know about you. I mean, I do a lot of podcasts. I don't do a lot of meetings. I don't like meetings. And my first thought upon reading this was, if people talking about like, well, you got too many meetings, so you need to send your digital avatar instead. My thought was, what if we just had less meetings? Is that maybe better solution than having to create an entirely new technology so that we can have more meetings?
Yeah, my thought was also just send it in an email. Like, I'm not exactly sure what there is to benefit from sending your digital avatar, which then will recap to you what happened. Why not just send information via text if that's how you're going to receive it anyway. But yeah, I don't know. This is something I never would have crossed my mind, but it did remind me of something that my colleague Jesse did a couple of years ago, where he was also like, oh, I have too many meetings and I don't necessarily feel like I contribute that much to most of them. And so why don't I just pre-record some messages and just have them play, automatically. And so he did that. And he just had this loop recording of him just, looking at the camera and looking like he was engaging. So this kind of feels like the next iteration of that. And I had to let Jesse know. I was like, have a million people sent you this article yet? But I don't know. I don't know what purpose this has. It feels oddly dystopian. I don't know if I want to be on a Zoom call with AI twins of people. And again, email. I promise that's direct, easy way to do this. Yeah.
I found this so strange. I mean, in part, I feel like, I'm a science fiction author as well. I feel like he's horning in on my territory here. Like, leave the dystopian stuff to us. Come on. But I thought what was really, my first thought again was this idea of like, if you had all these people, everybody in a meeting sending their digital avatars because nobody wanted to be in the meeting, then like, isn't there a conclusion that maybe that meeting did not need to happen? And maybe that's an end result of this. Like, all the AIs are off having their meetings by themselves and we all go and live our lives. I don't know. It felt increasingly strange the more I read his things like, oh, you could just go to the beach. It's like, well, that sounds great. I mean, I'd love to go to the beach, but then why am I in this job in the first place?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the question that I had was, if it's just a bunch of these avatars or these digital twins in this meeting, who is leading? Like, you know what I mean? Like, at what point is there a human that is initiating the conversations? Like, who gets to choose like, oh, I'm going to send my AI, but you physically need to be there because you need to lead the conversation and my AI will respond accordingly. I'm sure these are all things that he's thinking of, but it's fascinating to think of the ways that people are incorporating or trying to incorporate AI into like all these things where you're like, I don't know, do we need it? Not sure.
Yeah, there's a great point you raised there about sort of a digital divide, which is it's not going to be the people who are kind of harried in the lower level, employees or middle managers probably who are going to be using this as much as sort of the high level executives who are like a CEO of Zoom who has dozens of meetings on his calendar every day and is probably tired of going to meetings, which I totally get. But I don't know. it does, I hear from a lot of my friends who work at larger corporations and have a lot of these meetings every day that especially post, COVID, in an era where in the COVID, like sort of height of the pandemic, everybody was going to Zoom and people all had the Zoom fatigue.
Yes.
I can see why this appeals. But I totally agree with you. I don't really understand what sort of the end result of it is. What is the end game there in terms of, is everybody sending their AI twins to meetings? Are some people allowed to do it and some people aren't allowed to do it? What are you doing with the rest of your time? I mean, it feels like it's one of those memes almost where it's like, oh, he's almost got it. He's almost realized that maybe we have too many meetings, but instead his answer is, let's throw AI at the problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also is there there's all the logistics, is there a disclaimer that, if it ends up being looking incredibly lifelike or sounding incredibly lifelike, it's am I talking to you or am I talking to your AI twin? Yeah, no, I don't know. I think and he's obviously proposing this as something where you can spend more time on either tasks that matter with your family, or as you mentioned, just chilling, go chilling out wherever you want to go. But it also begs the question of it feels like a slippery slope too, where we have a lot of these conversations about AI and what it'll replace and how effective or necessary that is. And if we're talking about AI in the workplace, if you have this AI avatar that joins Zoom calls for you, what else will it do that then renders you unnecessary? And so that's, I think, something that I don't know if these CEOs are thinking about, but I know it's something that those of us who really want our jobs and want to hang on to our jobs are going to be thinking about and raising questions about.
Sure.
So I just wonder how far something like this would end up going.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was really interesting was he even at one point suggests essentially the idea of personalized large language models. So rather than all of us using ChatGPT and it's kind of the same ChatGPT for everybody, there would be, a Dan large language model and an Abrar large language model. You have your own, AI that's built off you. And he even alludes to the idea that at some point this could make decisions for you based on knowing you, which I also find fascinating as somebody who is the CEO of a publicly traded company, is does that, if your digital twin makes a policy decision or some sort of business decision that then ends up, say, costing your company millions of dollars or really affecting safety or security or something, can you blame it on your AI avatar? Oh, that was my AI avatar. It made that decision. It wasn't really me. Is that, or do you still get fired? I don't know. I think the implications of that are wild.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. Just to paint a picture of how kind of cautious I am with literally even the most basic AI. I was talking this week about how even when I do interviews, Otter AI is really great for transcribing, but I tend to actually like to listen to the interviews I do myself to not only be able to comb through them, but to make sure that they're really accurate. There's no typos or misunderstanding. And so to take that times 100 and say, well, this AI avatar is now me and it's going to make decisions and it's going to speak on my behalf and it's going to be another, my twin. I don't know if I have the trust to ever do that or to ever allow that, which is just, next level.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's essentially, it's your face, it's your voice, potentially, all these things. At what point does it become indistinguishable from you? This is another issue Patel raises, is security and privacy issues as well, right? If somebody, a bad actor or malware or something like that gets into your computer, can it take over your digital twin? Can it start injecting it with other information and start making different decisions? I think that's really kind of a fascinating sort of idea. I mean, the sort of poisoning the well, right? I mean, we already know AI has plenty of problems with inventing things that don't exist. I mean, the hallucination issue is a serious problem. And so the idea that maybe somebody could turn that to their own ends, I think adds a whole new dimension to what the implications of this could be. I am now full on in science fiction novelist headspace trying to figure out how this could go.
Write these ideas down. This is good fodder for your next
The
thing.
AI will write it down for me. It's good. No problem.
I think the other piece of it is in this interview when he talks about catering this avatar to be better at whatever it is you're not as good at in real life. So being a better salesperson, for example, he mentions. That's just really interesting because I don't mean to get all weird and sappy about it, but we're all unique and individual and we have our strengths and our weaknesses and it's what makes us human. But if you just had this capability to be I can make this avatar whatever I want it to be And then you just lose that, you completely lose that sense of humanity of like, well, if it can be anything, then like, what purpose am I as a human being serving in this company or organization if my AI is better at negotiations than I am? And so that kind of seems like a very odd thing to think about too.
Yeah, I feel like that even starts to verge into the personal realm as well. I mean, if you start sending, one can imagine a world where you send your digital AI on a video date or something like that, where it's like, it's more, be more charming, turn that charming dial way up or something like that. Or it's like making, sending Tinder messages for you or something like that. That would be super weird, right? Like, I don't know. This is one of the things that worries me the most about AI, as with any technology, is you can't uninvent it, right? Once it's out there, it's out there, and people will start finding more and more ways to apply it. And there comes a point where I feel like, especially now that we've seen the proliferation of deepfake technology and other things like that, where it's just like, can we ever rein that back in? Or are we at a stage now where it's like, you can never trust your eyes and your ears anymore at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, your Tinder comment reminded me that I feel like I've been living under a rock, but people really apparently do use generative AI to create these messages on dating platforms, which, okay, you take that and then you apply it to anything else, whether it's a work environment or whatever it is. What are you as a human saying, and how much of this is just generated? And so, I guess the good news is this sounds like it's off into the future and it'll take some time to develop, but I feel like the building blocks are already here. Right. And I just don't think anyone's going to be pumping the brakes anytime soon. So I'm like, is this an inevitable thing? Or will some miracle happen and we say, hey, let's take a minute to just think about this for a second?
Yeah, I'd certainly like to think that was the case. I reading through this, was struck by sort of just the very gung-ho nature of this entire conversation from Yaun's perspective, where he's like, this is the thing that I really want to really happen, and here's the steps we need to take to get there. And even admitting that it was a few years off was not necessarily, to my mind, spending as much time in consideration of what the end result of the consequences of this might be. And it does worry me a little bit, especially in the realm of AI, as we saw previously when sort of blockchain and NFT and Bitcoin, cryptocurrency were all really big. Like, people just plowed straight ahead into that, no guardrails at all. And we've seen some of the consequences of that with like the fall of the cryptocurrency exchanges and all of what that leads to. And to me, as somebody, if you're somebody in charge of making these decisions and you're someone in charge of developing technology and deciding the priorities of a multi-million or billion-dollar company, it is your responsibility to spend the time thinking about what the end consequences of this might be. And it seems like maybe Eric Yaun's just sort of offshored that to his AI avatar instead of worrying about it himself.
I know. That's so true. Maybe that avatar needs to join a meeting and clear this all up, or just join this chat with us and let us know what's going on there.
It turned up that hosting dial, and it just got it got way better than us. We don't even need to be here anymore.
And we'll just hop off and we'll just let it take over. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that, even a more like recent example of having to pump the brakes on something that rolled out AI related is Google's like AI overviews that were like telling you to eat rocks and put glue in your pizza. So even things that are that simple, where it's just your search results, those are things that, maybe a lot of these companies need to just take a minute. Like, we're in this mad dash and this race for all these companies to compete with each other and roll out the biggest, baddest version of AI. But maybe let's just take a minute to breathe and just think about things a bit more.
I think that's a great message, one that we should be sharing with more people. Well, Abrar, thanks so much for joining me this week. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Where can people find you, and what else are you up to these days?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's my first name, last name. Also on TikTok. Don't really post a lot of work-related stuff there, but you can hang out with me as a human being, not an AI avatar. And just gearing up for WWDC next week. So that'll be the talk of the town.
Indeed, it will. And when we come back, we're going to have an overview of what to expect at this year's Worldwide Developer Conference, which is coming up just next week. But first, before we get there, let us hear once again from Mr. Micah Sargent.
Hey, time for another quick break before we head back to Tech News Weekly. This time, Tech News Weekly is brought to you by our friends at Leo Photos. These days, many of us rely on the cloud in our digital day-to-day, and many apps and services just aren't protecting our data as they should. That's why we here at TWiT are avid users of Leo Photos Plus. I love Leo Photos Plus because what's so great about it is I have what I call the single source of truth for all of my photos. I can log in to my different accounts. I can connect to the different servers where my photos are stored and know that even if those servers, those sites go away, I have all of the photos that I've ever created and published and edited, and they're all right there on my device, but also that I can sync them to all the other devices I have. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. Leo Photos Plus is great. It gives you a single consolidated library for photos, videos, and other files that are scattered across your devices, your Mac, your Windows machine, your iPhone, perhaps even your Android device. Their platform makes it effortless to organize, curate, protect, and sync files from anywhere they're stored, even your social media accounts and the cloud. That's what I'm talking about. Even something like Instagram. And the best part, all of the files, they stay on your devices. They're not on distant servers. Leo Photos even supports your folder structure, but makes it much easier to search, curate, and organize your media across all your devices. It's a privacy-first storage solution that keeps your data local and easy to access. Cloud backups are entirely optional, but if you choose to use them, Leo Photos Plus will automatically encrypt your data for extra security. Even the platform's powerful AI capabilities, and I love this, are entirely on device. Nothing can be data mined. You can tag and search for photos using face and object recognition or metadata like date and location, and none of it is shared unless you want it to be. Put privacy first with Leo Photos Plus today. To help you get started, we've got a special offer. Get your first month free, then pay $99 for your first year of Leo Photos Plus. Don't miss this great deal. Sign up now to start your free month at our exclusive URL, mylio.com/TWIT. That's mylio.com/twit. Seriously, if you haven't gotten Leo Photos yet, go there now. Sign up for Leo Photos Plus with that free first month. So awesome. mylio.com/twit. All right, let's head back to the show. Take it away, Dan.
Thank you, Micah. Okay, we are back. And next week marks the annual Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple being held in Cupertino, California. Lots of exciting new stuff expected to be unveiled. And joining me to talk about that from 9to5mac.com is Ryan Christoffel. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
So there's lots of different stuff, obviously. We've heard a lot of rumors. Starting, let's say, with iOS 18, do you have some sort of high-level overview of what we can expect Apple to talk about when it comes to iPhone software updates?
Yeah, iOS 18 is going to be all about AI this year. Apple has even officially teased that AI is going to be the focus, and comes at a time following events and announcements from some of Apple's biggest competitors in this space, Google, Microsoft. OpenAI had a recent unveiling, and now it's Apple's turn. So expectations are that just about everything that you hear announced on stage is going to, in some ways, relate to AI. Maybe that will be a new and improved Siri that actually does the things that we have always hoped and wished that Siri could do for us. Maybe it's going to take the form of features that perhaps a few years ago, Apple would have billed as machine learning features, but now that AI is all the rage, they're going to use the term AI most likely. Things like the ability to more easily edit photos by removing unwanted objects, or get intelligent summaries of your text message conversations or an article in Safari, all kinds of things that lots of other competitors do already, but that Apple hasn't baked into iOS before. Expect to see a whole lot of AI build features next week.
Yeah, I mean, the popular conception seems to be that Apple is behind, quote unquote, on this sort of AI technology. Does it seem like the kind of thing they're going to be rolling out next week actually has a shot of bringing them into competition with some of these other companies? Or is this still a case where what they're doing may be more limited in scope or more may force them to work with partners?
Yeah, that's really the big question, honestly. So there are a lot of features that Apple is going to announce that will be sort of catch-up features where they are doing something that their competitors have already done. There will be an interesting partnership. Apple is partnering with OpenAI to bring some of the technology behind ChatGPT into the system. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. There are talks of a possible partnership with Google for Gemini as well. And all of this, again, apparently making Siri better than ever. But I think one kind of unique advantage that Apple has is it has this massive customer install base with its devices. And Apple can reach billions of people who are going to be using iOS 18 at some point. And so AI technology is really exciting for people like us. We get all jazzed up about it. But for, I'd say, the average person out there, they maybe know what ChatGPT is, kind of, sort of. But Apple really has an opportunity to take AI mainstream with iOS 18. So it may or may not do that with some revolutionary new feature that no one else is doing. But it could do it by just making these common AI features more accessible to more users. And so I think that's one angle that you're going to see from Apple next week. Another thing is that there are lots of concerns around AI and privacy and even its impact on the environment. And those have been two major talking points from Apple for years, as they are, in their words, like really privacy conscious. They put the user's privacy first. And I think they have done a good job of backing up those claims. And they have these big ambitions for being, environmentally conscious and aware, and their big 2030 goal to be completely carbon neutral. And so Apple can potentially have a unique advantage over its competitors by stressing what it can offer in terms of privacy and approaching AI in a way that really takes the environment into account.
Now, besides sort of this AI focus, are there any other features that are being rumored that may avoid being actually connected to AI? Is there anything else, or is this really just all AI all the time?
Yeah, I certainly hope that there are other things, and I think there will be. I'm guessing that many of us are going to be tired of hearing AI over and over again. But one of the big rumored features is the ability to do more home screen customization. So remember a few years back, there was this craze of everyone starting to build their aesthetic home screens by, creating custom icons, using the Shortcuts app. Well, it sounds like Apple is going to provide even more tools to make your home screen exactly what you want it to be. This will involve being able to place your apps and your widgets anywhere on the screen. So you don't have to, start in the top left corner and have them all be right next to each other. You could put an app in the bottom right corner with nothing else above it if you really want to, as well as the possibility of retheming app icons so that maybe they match a better aesthetic. What it sounds like Apple's going to do is build out some sort of home screen customization system that's similar to what they did on the lock screen, where you can build your custom lock screens with wallpapers and different fonts and all that. It sounds like something similar is going to come to the home screen, which I think a lot of users are going to appreciate. Beyond that, there will always be a variety of other things. One big change is that iOS is going to gain support for RCS as a new messaging protocol. So right now, the iPhone uses SMS and MMS, and RCS will enable, hopefully, better, more compatible conversations between iPhone users and Android users, potentially bringing some of the features that we come to expect in iMessage conversations to your green bubble threads as well. So that could be really neat, as well as a variety of other changes like Control Center updates, redesigned settings app, and just more goodies for the system apps with some design tweaks here and there.
Now, last year's WWDC saw the introduction of the Apple Vision Pro, which of course debuted earlier this year. Widely expected that we'll see a version 2 of the Vision OS software that powers it. What kind of stuff can we expect, or should we hope to see from that update?
Yeah, Apple has a really unique opportunity now to show what the next year of the Vision Pro is going to look like. It had what seems like a good launch a few months back, but so far has not rolled out internationally. It's expected that Apple will announce dates for international availability of the Vision Pro next week. But Vision OS 2, what is that going to look like? we know a handful of things. One is that there are expected to be more and more native first-party apps built for Vision OS. So this means that some of the apps that when the Vision Pro first launched, Apple had not yet built natively on Vision OS. Instead, they were running as essentially iPad apps in compatibility mode. Those will get their own full-blown Vision OS versions. So that'll be a nice change. One kind of quality of life improvement that's expected is the ability to reorder apps on your Vision OS home screen so they don't have to just be ordered in the way that Apple has them. There's a really neat live captions feature that Apple has announced. It's targeted for accessibility use, but it's just a really fantastic feature nonetheless, where you can have live captions visible in your space for any spoken dialogue. So this could be dialogue that's inside of apps that you're using. It could be people having a conversation with you in your room. The Vision Pro will be able to automatically put captions up in your view of everything that's being spoken. So obviously really amazing for users who are deaf or hard of hearing, but also just a really neat feature in this time where I think more and more people tend to rely on captions, whether they're watching videos on YouTube or Netflix or something else. So yeah, that's another great change that's coming next week.
Now, I'm really looking forward to the future where it does the automatic translation as it goes. That's super Star Trek Universal Translator there. It feels like it's close too. Obviously, Apple's got a ton of other platforms, Mac, TV, Watch. Any other surprises coming on those fronts?
Well, the iPad is getting a calculator app. So big
news. Stop the presses, everybody.
Yeah, it really seems like Apple is putting all of its focus into AI, and the way that its platforms work these days, things that are built for iOS 18 also tend to benefit iPadOS 18 and the new version of macOS that's coming out. And so because Apple is bringing its platforms closer and closer together feature-wise, even though in the keynote you may see a feature that's billed as an iPhone feature or an iPad feature or Mac feature, for many of them, they're actually going to exist across all of those platforms. But as far as specifics that are, only for a given platform, it really seems like the iPhone is going to be the focus this year. I wouldn't expect to see too much out of the iPad, Mac. watchOS had a big year last year, so it's probably not going to get a whole lot either. And then tvOS, it never gets too much, so I wouldn't have too high hopes this year.
Well, hope springs eternal. I can keep crossing my fingers that they'll finally update tvOS. Well, Ryan Christoffel, thank you so much for joining you. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter /X, Mastodon, Threads. My user is iRyan TLDR, IRYAN TLDR.
All right, thanks very much. All right. When we return, we're going to switch gears and talk about AI feature coming to Windows that may have some unintended security consequences. Stay tuned for that. But first, let's hear from Micah.
Hey, one more quick break. Thank you so much, Dan, for subbing in for me today on Tech News Weekly. I do want to take a moment to tell you about our next sponsor of the show. It's the Eufy Video Smart Lock E330. I was able to install this device with no hassle, no problem. In fact, I've got a box and I've got a screwdriver, and that's all that I needed. You can enjoy keyless entry. The Eufy Video Lock is super easy to install with just that Phillips screwdriver, no drilling required. And with 0.3 second fingerprint recognition and a 1 second unlock, the embedded AI self-learning chip actually becomes more accurate with every use. So every time you unlock with that fingerprint, it gets a little bit smarter, a little bit better at knowing that it's you. And it's so nice to be able to just tap and unlock. Plus, no more battery anxiety. With a 10,000 milliamp hour rechargeable battery, your Eufy Video Lock could last up to 4 months. And don't worry, because you will get a low battery notification before it runs out. You can control your front door remotely through the Eufy Video Lock app, including passcode unlocking, remote control with 2K clear sight, two-way audio, and enhanced night vision. One of the things that I super love about the Eufy Video Smart Lock E330 is the fact that it comes with a built-in key lock. So even if everything else fails, I don't have to worry about it because I know that I can move aside the little doorbell button and unlock the door with the key. Plus, wow, no monthly fees, because you will have your Eufy video lock recordings locally and never have to pay for storage. This is just a ridiculously wonderful device with all of the fixins that I could ever want for a video smart lock. Enjoy a worry-free experience with an 18-month warranty, all backed by Eufy's 24/7 professional customer service team. Get yours today by searching Eufy Video Lock on Amazon or visit eufy.com. That's EUFY.com. Thank you so much to Eufy for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Dan, it's time for you to take it away.
Thank you once again, Micah. My pleasure for being here. All right. Microsoft recently announced a feature called Windows Recall to help you remember everything you've ever been doing on your computer. Sounds a little weird? Does sound a little weird. Potentially a little security concerns, possibly. Joining us to talk about this is Zac Bowden from Windows Central. Zac, thank you for being here. And could you lay out for us perhaps what is Windows Recall intended to do?
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me. Yeah, so Windows Recall, this is a thing, an app that Microsoft announced that's coming soon to Windows 11 Copilot Plus PCs. That's, as you said, designed to remember everything you do. It essentially takes screenshots of your screen every few seconds and triages that as snapshots that you can sort of refer back to at a later point. So it uses OCR and SLMs to analyze the text and images in those snapshots and lets you search for them using natural language. It's Microsoft's latest AI sort of tool or feature or experience, and it's designed to encourage users to buy these new Copilot Plus PCs, which are the next generation of Windows PCs, if you will. This feature is exclusive to these Copilot Plus PCs, so it won't be coming to existing devices. You have to buy a new device to get it, but if you do buy that new device, you will be able to use this Windows Recall feature.
And so in terms of, this feature, remembering things, certainly seems handy if you can't remember where you read that article or who you were talking to about going to dinner, that you can just search for it here. But it seems like researchers have discovered there may be some security concerns about this.
Yeah, so when the feature was first announced, Microsoft did sort of talk a little bit about the privacy and security of it. And at the time, they were saying things like, that they don't intend to use the data for any of their own means, that all the data it collects is stored locally on the device. It doesn't get uploaded to Microsoft servers or the cloud, and they can't train their AI models on it because Microsoft itself can't see the data it collects. And that was, I think, in Microsoft's mind, supposed to calm people's nerves. It didn't, and it's sort of snowballed from there. It has been discovered since then that, at least in the sort of pre-release builds that we currently have, the Windows Recall app, the data it stores is not encrypted on the device. So when you're logged into a computer, Windows Recall can be running in the background, collecting all of that information, and all that information is just almost sort of readily readable by potential malware, for example. There are some basic sort of protections against normal users trying to access that information, but it's easily bypassed. And so a lot of people are quite concerned at how Recall is storing that data. Microsoft so far has remained radio silent on this, so they've not commented on Recall's method of storing that data so far, but it's not looking good right now.
So are these concerns more theoretical? A lot of times we see news about security vulnerabilities, and this could potentially be exploited if such and such conditions were to come to pass. Or does this really seem like something, hey, somebody gets access to your computer, whether it's physically or using a piece of malware, and they really can just scrape all this information up?
Yeah, so I think physical access, there's less of a chance of your data being stolen, because Microsoft does use something called BitLocker, which encrypts the data when the device is not logged in. So if you're not logged in and your laptop's off and your laptop gets stolen, that data should be safe. The only issue is when you are logged in using that device. And so malware is really the sort of main culprit here that could potentially jump in and steal that data from you. Right now, of course, there isn't any malware out there, to my knowledge, that's already doing this. And even if there was, it's probably ineffective because there are no Copilot Plus PCs on the market currently. As I said, this is exclusive to Copilot Plus PCs, and those don't start shipping until June 18th. So that market of potential sort of victims, I guess, is going to be very small at the beginning anyway. So if you're concerned about this feature yourself, you don't need to be right now. This feature's not coming to your existing PC. And to avoid it, just don't buy a new PC, which isn't hard for most of us, I don't think.
And does Microsoft, do they build in any protections in this feature in terms of things that it does not actively store when it's looking at stuff on your screen? Is it redacting any sort of information or ignoring any specific types of data, or is it just really grabbing everything?
So by default, it will grab everything except for private browsing sessions in Chrome and Edge and Opera and Firefox, I believe. There are some tools that are built into Windows Recall that allow you to configure what it can and can't see. So you can filter out specific apps and specific websites. So if you didn't want it to see your banking website, for example, you could type in the URL of your banking website and Windows Recall would then know to ignore that when it's on screen. Or if you had an app such as the media player or something, you could set that to not show up in Windows Recall as well, and it simply wouldn't snapshot it. And you can even, if something comes up that by chance that you didn't think would, and it has been snapshotted by Windows Recall, you can go into the Windows Recall app and you can delete the snapshot, and you can even go in and configure. You can bulk delete multiple snapshots up to forever. So you can delete all of them, or you can delete the past hour, the past 10 days, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a lot of control around it if you are using it. But the concern really is malware jumping in and stealing that data, which Microsoft really does need to address.
Yeah. Are there any privacy concerns in terms of this being deployed in, say, corporate environments where your manager might have access to it or a company might want it deployed? How does it kind of play in those larger enterprise environments?
So I don't believe we know yet if enterprises can take that data and read it for themselves, at least not officially. I don't think there's a built-in system into Windows where that's going to be a thing. Of course, since that data is currently readable by anyone, there's nothing stopping an enterprise from building its own tool to extract that data. But yeah, this is a tool that could, in theory, be enabled on enterprise PCs. It's not limited to PCs that run at home.
And in terms of, I mean, I know you said Microsoft hasn't really responded to this yet. Is there any expectation they will make changes to the system? Does it seem likely, or are they kind of, committed at this point?
I think they have no choice. I think if they leave it as is, this feature is not going to get any uptick. There's been a lot of outrage and backlash already based on the discovery that this data isn't encrypted on the device. So I think they have no choice but to figure out a way to at least ensure the data can't be read by anything other than the Windows Recall app. How they go about that, I don't know. Whether they can do it in time for the launch of Copilot Plus PCs on June 18th is unknown. I think it's most likely that they will go ahead with the launch on June 18 and promise an update in due course that adds better protections.
Does this seem, I mean, obviously we've heard a ton of concerns around privacy and AI. Does this seem like it's just kind of adding fuel to the fire in terms of AI concerns, or is this just a kind of a one-off?
Yeah, it certainly isn't helping. The sad thing about this is the Windows Recall app and what it does is actually really good. It's very clever. It's one of those things that you don't realize you need until you have it. I've been using it over the last week and it works surprisingly well. A great example is I was writing an article today in my own CMS and I deleted a paragraph thinking, oh, that doesn't make sense here. I don't need to use that. Only to realize later in the day that actually I could have reused that paragraph elsewhere in the story. On a normal PC, that paragraph would have been gone and I would have had to rewrite it from scratch. But with Windows Recall, I was able to jump in, go back to the point in the day where that paragraph I was writing, copy it from the snapshot and paste it back into my CMS. And so it saved that text for me. And that's a basic example of what it can do. But it's one of those small things that once you have it, it's nice that you do have it. And so, I really hope Microsoft is able to fix these sort of privacy concerns because, like I said, the feature is really quite cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that often comes up with a lot of these AI related features is there are certainly downsides, but I think you can't really just look at sort of, oh, there's this potential risk for things being misused, but it does seem like it has a lot of benefits to it as well. And obviously Microsoft is making a lot of big plays on AI and kind of betting on it, it seems like, in terms of the Copilot branding and all of that.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's really quite clever. The processing is handled on device, and you can even search for things like images. So if you see like a red bag in an advertisement on a web page, and you want to go back to that later in the day, you can just type red bag into the Recall app, and it will bring up that moment where you saw that red bag online. And yeah, it works really well.
And, in terms of the security stuff, it seems like some of this was uncovered by security researchers who've been sort of poking around through these things. Are there any other interesting aspects of this system that they've discovered while poking around through it? Or are there any other things that Microsoft didn't discuss that people kind of now see this system as being used for?
No, not really. It did prove that Microsoft was telling the truth when they said it doesn't upload data to the cloud. It really is all handled on the device. At least for now, I know a lot of people are concerned or skeptical that Microsoft will change that in the future and start uploading that information. That remains to be seen. But as of right now, it really is all local. And the only real concern is that that data is readable by a human. It's not encrypted, which it should be.
Right. All right. Well, Zac Bowden, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you online?
Thank you. You can find my content at windowscentral.com, and you can follow me on Twitter or X at x.com/Zac Bowden.
Thanks very much. All right. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That's where you can go to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. And if you want all our shows ad-free, check out Club TWiT. It's $7 per month. It gets you every TWiT show with no ads, an exclusive TWiT Plus feed with extra content, and a members-only Discord channel at twit.tv/clubtwit. You can also subscribe to individual shows on Apple Podcasts for $2.99 a month. You'll get the audio feed completely ad-free. I would like to thank Micah Sargent for giving me the opportunity to sit in here today. You can find me at dmoren.com and my various social media things. I'm on Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon, pretty much every place as at dmoren. You can also find me co-hosting the Clockwise podcast with Micah every week over at relay.fm/clockwise, as well as my other tech podcast, The Rebound, at reboundcast.com. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining us. I'm Dan Moren, and see you next time.